Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. In this video, it's time for some redemption. Yesterday, I went through a mix which I felt could be a lot better. Well, time to put my money where my mouth is and actually make it better. So the foundational issue of why I did not like this mix really came down to the low end. I think that created sort of a domino effect. The low end was not particularly strong and it was kind of sloppy, and that made everything else kind of have to compensate to a certain degree. So in this video, I want to fix the low end. I want to go through and make it really come together and work. But before we start with that, let's just play what's going on in the low end without any processing on it, just so that we have a good starting point. All right. So that's kind of where it was, and in the original mix I actually had created a kick drum layer just to kind of beef it up, so I'm going to bring in that layer without any kind of phase manipulation first, just so we can hear it. Makes it a little better with some phase manipulation. Makes it even a little bit better still. But does it make it great? No, I don't think that it makes it great. So where do we start with all of this? There's definitely some like weird stringy tones, some kind of like womp womp type of things that are a little bit kind of throwing me. The bass feels a little bit thin, like it's not really creating a cushion. It's not punching particularly hard. So where do we start? Well, let's examine the kick drum first here. Let's mute that 808 real quick. So the kick drum here, to me, the original kick is really just a texture kick. Like, it's got a really cool sound to it. It's got this like spread reverb thing that's just really neat, but it's not giving us a lot of like punch and power. And we could certainly try to brute force some punch into it. We could use transient designers, we could use like a big low end boost, but I think the easiest solution here is just to layer it with a tight 808, something that just is going to give it some really, really nice punch. So I came up with a couple of options that worked. This is the main one that I like. Nice, hearty, subby 808, because that's what this kick needs. This kick doesn't have a lot of sub power. It's got mid-range power. It's got low mid-range power, but not a lot of sub power. So a nice subby 808, pretty tight. If I go over to my curves here, I'm actually cutting sustain and release so that the tail is on the shorter side. Not necessarily short, but like it's not ringing forever, because that's not what I really need from it. I just need a nice, tight kind of punch. And then I found another kick which is really interesting, which blended really nicely with this kick. But it didn't really do the job that the other kick was doing. But a little combination of both goes a long way. So tucking this down like 6 dB, this like really interesting textural kick, and it's just going to give us a little bit more hit. Alright, so now we've got a really cool sounding kick drum overall. The only thing that I don't dig about the kick now is that there's certain tones in the top kick that kind of need to go a little bit. So going to take down a little bit of ring that's around 190 hertz, and this is a pretty narrow band here, and then a pretty wide band, like a medium-ish wide band, just where that like air is coming off of the kick, just to sort of allow it to glue in a little bit better, and then a little bit of makeup gain here. So you'll hear the kicks kind of sync together. That's really the goal here. So before, and I'll switch it on, watch the bypass button, you'll see it. kind of glues them in together a little bit more. I think if it was just the kick drum, I wouldn't mind it separating the way that it is, but because we're sticking a bass and a bass guitar on top of it, I want it to be a little bit more glued. So we can do away with this. We don't need this guy anymore. Thanks. Thanks for your service. You won't be needed anymore. And now we can move on to the primary bass. So it's not bad. It's got like a really nice kind of like horn noise to it where it has like this like almost brassy sound to it. Let's solo it up real quick. Like, it's got a really pronounced nose, and I don't hate that. I think the only thing that I don't like about this bass is that the ideas aren't going far enough. So there's like a spread on this bass that allows it to be stereo. It's kind of in the mids that's spreading out. I want to take that idea a step further. Now, this looks a little insane, but this is mid-side processing here. I'm boosting primary bass range, which is around 100 hertz. That's where we're going to hear the note of it. And then I'm cutting a lot of the top and mids, but only in the mid channel. So all the side information is going to stay where it's at. And this is going to create the effect of the entire bass kind of widening overall in a very interesting way. So little less of that brass in the middle, stays in the sides, but a little bit more of that kind of hearty tone that is going to like get above laptop speakers and boom boxes. Not subtone, but primary bass tone. Why primary bass tone? Well, it makes a lot of sense when we hear it with the kick. Here's our before and after. It's kind of that puzzle piece thing. I don't like to mix that way, but in this particular case, it kind of works. There's so much like sub in the kick now that the bass, even though it's got a good sub to it, can just kind of rest on top of it. Now, mind you, I'm not cutting sub from my bass. I'm not like making room in the bass so that the kick can come through. I don't think that's necessary here. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. In this particular case, I found a level that I liked and then just decided that that primary bass range could just kind of sit on top of the kick a little bit more and then create an overall fuller bass altogether. So here I'm really specifically trying to target that brass tone while at the same time cut some of that like weird nose tone. It's like a little bit of both are happening. So listen to like the timbre of the bass. And you notice when I do that blomp, blomp, like the sustain of that march tone kind of comes out a little bit. That's how I know that I'm doing this right. A little extra boost here. Okay, and we're going to get to this in a minute. This is a ducker, but we're not there yet. So if we listen to the sentence of this bass line, bump, 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 that bump, 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 that's the interesting part of it, really. That's the part that gives it the funk. So I have a parallel channel here, and this parallel channel has a gate on it that's automated. So it's going to allow the bass to come through. Let's see, where is it? There's our bypass. Only on that turnaround, it's gonna come up. This is basically like a really roundabout way of doing volume riding. I kind of had it semi set up from the previous mix, so I just kind of rolled with it, but you'll listen to what it's bringing in. So what this is Decapitator, cranked pretty high, right? So giving it a lot of juice. The gate that's basically acting as a volume automator, and then the this S1 imager pumped all the way up. So basically I'm just stretching it way out to the sides. This is not meant to be a primary sound. This is meant to be a parallel layer. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a little extra tone happening with the main bass part, the bump, 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 and then when it gets to that bump, 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 the overall level is going to jump up and the overall width is going to jump up. So it's going to be a little bit narrow, 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 wide, big, narrow, 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 wide, big. And so not only are we going to get the rhythm from the actual bass part, but now we're going to enhance that sense of rhythm and that sense of phrasing with our sonics. And that gives us a much more interesting foundation. All right, now we have this big old 808. And I just want to crank that thing up. Let's just turn it way up. Let's turn it up like 5 dB. So while that deep sub is in, we really don't need any sub from the actual bass synth at all, and that's why I've set up this ducker. So now every time the 808 hits, everything that's below 100 Hertz is going to get ducked down. I still want the tone of that bass. If I have the weight of the 808, but I have the tone of the bass, it's not going to feel like the bass is going away. It's just going to feel like the 808 is cleaner. And then our last element is this melodic guitar, which kind of just accents it. This was already on from, I think this was actually on from JJ Boogie's session. I don't even think I changed this when I did the mix. So this setting right here is dating back like 11 years. There's a little bit of a weird ring here that I want to get rid of. Yeah, that womp, womp, like that weird string ring. But that's it. That's all I wanted to get rid of. Otherwise, guitar sounds great. Now, as the mix develops later on, I might choose to do some kind of panning or some kind of stereo spread on that bass guitar. I think that that could be cool, but right now, we don't need it. Right now, this works. Okay, now what? So now the sauce for the whole low end. So this is the Black Box HG2. It's one of those things where it's kind of hard to get it wrong. This is a modified version of one of my presets, which comes with this. It's the earbud fullness preset, and it really, like, it creates this very dense low end that things can sit on top of, and it's really meant so that if somebody's listening on, like, you know, the really tiny earbuds or whatever, they're still going to get a good sense of sub. That was the idea behind the design of it. So it's a little bit too extreme on its own. I'll turn it up to 100% and you'll hear what I mean. So without it. With. It makes the bass huge, but it's also really pancaking the drums. Ignore how loud it got for a second and just listen to what's happening to the transient of the kick. It's kind of getting eaten alive, so we don't necessarily need all of this. I found that really just like 35% blended in parallel was really good sounding. Basically, it's taking everything that's there, and it's just making it all feel fuller, thicker. I'm not really losing punch. I'm not really changing the tone too much. It's just suddenly there's a lot more there. Couple little things that need to get finished up to really bring this home. I think that we could just sharpen the attack on the entire bass part across the board. So that would be 4. And I frequently do some kind of transient enhancement into a clipper when it comes to drums or low-end parts. I find that that can be really cool. It's a very effective way of just getting, like, if you don't mind it being kind of crusty and crunchy, which in this particular case I really don't, it's a really good way of getting more attitude and punch and attack. And yes, it breaks up a little bit because of the clipper, but it's okay if you're willing to accept that as part of the sound, if that's part of the idea and part of the feel. And in this particular case, this marching energy, I think it really does work. And then lastly, I just want like a little bit more upper mid overall, just to kind of sharpen it, brighten it. And so this is a really broad boost centering around 2K, and 2K on a bass is pretty high up. So, you know, it's just bringing a little color into it. Now we have a nice, big, full, hard-hitting low end. And from this point, I think the rest of the mix actually is going to be pretty easy going forward. But there was a lot of technical challenges there that I think I just wasn't completely equipped for when I did this 10 years ago, that I'm much more equipped for now. So, growth. Hey. All right, gonna wrap up there. If you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. Interested in getting really in depth into the low end and exploring some low end techniques, you can get the low end tutorial, the complete low end guide at the Weiss Advice shop. It's not very expensive, and there's also a lot of other great tutorials there, so I'll put a link in the description below. And lastly, you know what we say here at Weiss Advice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.